When I do these videos, I obviously know what I'm going to talk about, and I know somewhat what I'm going to say, but they're not scripted. There's not an earpiece in here. I'm pretty much improvising the video. I could get my words wrong. Sometimes I'll redo the video if I'm feeling a bit more of a perfectionist. Sometimes I think, F it. Today, I knew what I wanted to talk about. Interestingly, at this moment, I don't know what I'm going to title the video. Be interesting what that is. You'll be watching this video. You'll know what the title of this video is, because there's different things I want to discuss. I want to discuss the fact that since Zack Snyder left Warner Brothers and DC, they've released 14 DC movie titles. Forget the streaming stuff. You can never tell how successful or unsuccessful streaming has become. Now, this is why I made sure one of my friends sent me the stats for Zack Snyder's Justice League when it was released on HBO Max, because I knew they were going to lie about the views, which they did. So I know how many people watched that movie, and it was a hell of a lot. Some people watched it in bits and pieces. They didn't watch it, stop it, and never go back to it again. That was a lie. They stopped and started it because it was a 4-hour damn movie, and some people like me sat there all the way through. I could tell it was popular as well, and I couldn't get, a 4K Blu-ray copy, a 2-disc copy of Zack Snyder's Justice League when it was first released, or the IMAX copy of BVS, because they were popular and they probably didn't make as many copies as they should have done. They underestimated it. That's WB for you. So, since Snyder's left, they've made 14 movies. Do you want to know how many of those movies have made bank? 4 of them. I'm going to read you the list very shortly. But clearly there's been a series finale for Superman and Lois. Now, I don't have access to Superman and Lois as soon as it's on the air. I won't have access to Creature Commandos. And we've had the reactions, the initial reactions of Creature Commandos. It's standing at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Nothing should ever be 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's gone down to about 98, 97, maybe 95%. I think it will drop to about the late 80s or something, right? Oh, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Creature Commandos. So I've got friends who get early access. So what they do for me, they send me screenshots with text written from all the important scenes, describing all the important scenes. So I know what's going on, not so I can review them. It would be inaccurate of me to review episodes, from getting that information, but so I know what I'm talking about. So I know if I'm going to like the stuff, I can give you my opinions on it. So bear with me on the series finale of Superman and Lois, which I haven't seen, but I've seen excerpts of because of people on social media. I want to be spoiled. I need to be spoiled because I do this and because I'm passionate and because I love DC and I love movies and scripted TV in general. I'm having a great time right now away from DC, re-watching, what is it? Law and Order Special Victims Unit, SVU. What a great show that is. And I think that what Dick Wolf has done with that franchise, just changing the subject quickly, is beyond entertainment. It's a public service. It's an amazing little franchise. If you've never seen it, I think they're on Netflix. SVU's on Netflix. Check it out. Anyway, back to what we're talking about here. So here is the list of the 14 movies that have been released, DC movies that have been released since Zack Snyder has left DC, and it's very, very interesting, right? So, first of all, Justice League, which was a flop. A movie, an unfinished movie, basically, that was released, basically trying to redo what Zack did. We will never forget. There's 2 movies you should never forget that sum up New Hollywood. Zack Snyder's Justice League and Justice League. Justice League made around 650 million, around the same as Man of Steel. A Justice League movie should be making about a couple of $2 billion. It didn't do that. They made Zack's movie. Zack made his movie. They gave him the money to make his movie. Forget about the 70 million Stanky from AT&T gave him afterwards. They made Zack's movie, and then they gave Joss Whedon more money to redo Zack's Justice League, which we call it Justice League, right? Because it's not Justice League, it's Justice League. It's shit, it's an embarrassment, it's a disgrace, it was a flop. Aquaman is a hit. It was the DCEU's biggest hit. So Justice League, nothing to do with Zack Snyder. Aquaman, James Wan was consulting constantly with Zack Snyder during the making of this movie. But all the credit for this movie, and it does have one of Zack's writers who was involved with Zack Snyder's Justice League as well. Forgot the guy's name. Aquaman is a brilliant, stunning movie. It has a beautiful narrative. It's great. A lot of it is very accurate to the comics. Obviously, the casting of Momoa isn't, but Momoa is a great Arthur Curry, great Aquaman. This is one of the best comic book movies you will ever freaking see. Then we had Shazam. Nothing to do with Zack Snyder. That is deemed as a hit. I think it's a solid family, fun movie. It's the old family thing, the Fast and the Furious family vibe. It's an okay movie, but it didn't even make $400 million at the global box office because it only cost them. Because it cost them under $100 million to make, it was deemed as a hit. Because that's why Hamada was brought in to make DC movies on budget. Didn't matter if they were good, bad, indifferent, as long as they didn't cost too much money, because the Justice League thing had cost them so much, they didn't know which way to turn anymore. They'd got rid of Snyder, they were in an almighty mess. Outside of the DCEU, again, nothing to do with Zack Snyder, Todd Phillips had this beautiful idea of making kind of thought-provoking, one-off, black label DC movies about different DC characters, probably mostly about DC villains. The first idea was of Joker. It was a hit. It made over $1 billion. If they had left Phillips alone, if they didn't try and force him to make a Joker sequel and allow him to make the next villain movie, then Phillips would have cooked and would have kept on cooking in his own little corner of the DC universe. Birds of Prey, nothing to do with Zack Snyder. It was a feminist flop. Wonder Woman 84 was never released in movie theatres. It was only released on HBO Max. They reckon it did record-breaking streaming numbers. It did okay on HBO Max. It was a bad comic book movie. If I'm going to deem Aquaman as one of the best, then Wonder Woman 84 proves that Patty Jenkins is a crap director, or she's certainly a crap director at making comic book movies, and she actually had very little to do with the first Wonder Woman movie. Anyway, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, which I've said is a brilliant comic book movie. I really like it personally, but it was a flop. It was day and date. It was during one of the biggest strains of COVID. I sat in a movie theatre, Odeon, all on my own. I loved it. I had special permission to take my mask off because there was no one in there. I enjoyed watching this movie, but it was a flop. Black Adam was a flop for two reasons. I like Black Adam. I don't think they should have ever made Black Adam. I don't think anyone asked for a Black Adam movie, but I think it's a really good attempt by The Rock. Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate is awesome in that movie. Aldis Hodge as Hawkman is freaking amazing in that movie. And we have a great little cameo of Amanda Waller, Viola Davis. She's always great. By the way, she used to guest star in Law and Order Special Victims Unit as well. Great actress, but yeah, she's a great Waller. No one's going to be a better Waller than Viola Davis. So Black Adam cost too much. Far too much, but you can see it on the screen. I like it when a film costs a lot of money, but you can actually see it on the screen. You can see why they spent the money. And one of his cast members, I can't remember her name, but I think she said something about being trans or something, or whatever she was, or whatever she said, and it upset China, so it was banned in China. If Black Adam wasn't banned in China, it would have, I think it made over 400 million. It wasn't a bad box office, but because of what they spent, it wasn't enough. I think it could have made another couple of 100 million more if it went to China. Who knows? I think because I think if they hit about 600 million, they automatically get a sequel, or that's what I've heard on the grapevine. Black Adam, like the Suicide Squad, a really good, entertaining, enjoyable comic book movie that didn't make money. So another flop. The Batman obviously was a hit, no matter what anyone says. 750 million just at the end of the COVID pandemic. It's a really good Batman movie. I really like it. I still think Batman Begins is better. I still think The Dark Knight is better. I still think Batman Returns is better. I still think Batman 89 is better. That's my opinion. I think Batman vs Superman is better. I think Affleck's Batman is better than Robert Pattinson's Batman. But I think Rob and what Matt Reeves did with that movie, and I enjoyed Penguin as well, so it was a hit. And then Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which was a total fucking disaster. And then you had Blue Beetle, again, a woke disaster. The Flash movie, an absolute disaster. The good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what that movie's about. I did see a better cut in the test screening, as I've told you many times. I did see a better cut of Wonder Woman 84, where they actually attempted to do the Flashpoint thing. Anyway, we won't get into that. And then Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was a disaster. Actually, I've seen that movie. There is a movie hidden within the bad movie. It's cut for around 2 hours. James Gunn interfered in this movie heavily, and this was what drove James Wan out of WB and New Line Cinema. He'd been with them for years, and I think he's with, Universal? I don't know where he's gone, but he's left them. I mean, what he did with the first Aquaman, what he's done with his horror movies at New Line, he's a brilliant director and a much better director than James Gunn. So that was a flop. Joker Folie en Deux, Joker 2, was also a flop. I've defended the movie, but by this point, Todd Phillips was so pissed off with what they did to him. Right, so that's 14 movies. Only 4 out of those 14 movies have been successful. That's a disaster, and that's not an accident. And you can poke about 1 billion sticks and give me 1 billion reasons why all those movies have flopped. Since Zack Snyder has left, 14 movies, only 4 hits. Actually, I can add, League of Super Pets, DC's League of Super Pets, which was produced by The Rock, starred The Rock as Crypto. Again, it was another great attempt, but it was also a flop. It didn't make any money. So, since Snyder, they have failed again and again and again. So, this is the height of the task facing James Gunn. Talking of James Gunn, we had the initial reactions of Creature Commandos. I said to you that everything about this show would be predictable, like night following day. So we knew that Creature Commandos was going to get great reactions from critics. We're beyond trusting them anymore. When they speak the truth about a movie, and you watch the movie or a TV show, and you think, shit, they're actually speaking the truth. It's frightening that there's a couple of honest ones. Now, Jeff Snyder, who's a bit of a scooper and a journalist, didn't like it. He watched 2 episodes, and a lot of people who liked it said it takes about 3 episodes to get warmed up. The people who sent me all the information on Creature Commandos said the same thing. But Jeff Snyder didn't like it. He said he was put off from the moment you see, spoiler alert, James Gunn, an animated James Gunn, in the opening credits. I find that's hubris, isn't it? It just takes you out of it, and I think that's a bit silly. But this is where, look, and here's another thing, right? So the critics love it. The initial reactions are very positive. Look, this is what, as I've said before, this is what James Gunn does well. Group of characters, anti-heroes, funny, you get to know them. This time it's Suicide Squad, but with aliens and monsters. It's a bit like the movie Monsters vs. Aliens. It's the same kind of concept, really. Slightly different, but kind of the same. Now, the information I've got is that the characters are interesting. The characters he's picked, are interesting. People are saying the kind of crossover from the DCEU to DCU and explaining all that is done really well. And really, Peacemaker Season 1 is more canon than the Suicide Squad. He's picked a couple of moments from the Suicide Squad to make canon, but I think mostly the Suicide Squad isn't canon. Now, originally, but this is what I'm saying, originally when he was writing that Superman movie, before Zaslav, before DC Studios, before he became co-CEO, because as I say, what you're seeing here, Creature Commandos, Peacemaker 2 Waller, this was part of the Hamada plan. Him writing a Superman movie was part of the Hamada plan. Everything we're basically seeing is part of the Hamada plan. Nothing has actually changed, but they're trying to convince us that this is a fresh start. Very, very interesting. The Superman movie, again, a group of characters who are not doing things the right way, anti-heroes who, have to, grow to trust Superman. It's the same thing. He is a one-trick pony. It's a trick he normally does well, but I think one of the things I'm seeing from some of the negative reviews is it's the same thing, and he's not even pretending to do things a little bit different. So he is a one-trick pony, and ultimately this is going to end up hurting the DCU. I think what you'll find, the only way the DCU can work, if he goes in the background and he gets other creatives to do things. I believe that Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow will be more celebrated by critics than his Superman movie will be. Because as I say, Creature Commandos was always happening, DCU or no DCU. So they're calling it the first entry point of the DCU. It's been forced into the DCU. This is what I mean. This is not a reboot. There's some things that are canon, mostly James Gunn's things, and some things that are not canon. Most DCEU things are not canon to the DCU. So it's new, but it's not new. It's cake and eat it time, isn't it? So at the end of the day, right, from what I've seen, what people have shown me of this show, it's very James Gunn. If you like Guardians of the Galaxy, if you like Peacemaker, if you like the Suicide Squad, you're going to love this. I didn't like the trailers, and a lot of people who didn't like the trailers said the same thing. Actually, they're liking the show. I expect when I actually get to see this, I'm going to love it, because this is what he does well. But the real test is Superman. That's what's going to decide whether this franchise is good or not some animated show. It's been criticised by IGN for being too horny and trying to, get straight blokes off, right? And IGN said, well, I thought we moved, beyond that. No, we haven't. Straight men have urges, straight women have urges, gay women have urges, gay men have urges. I want to live in a world where gay people can see their urges on TV and movies fulfilled as well. Listen, whatever gender pronoun you are, whatever sexual orientation you are, you secretly whack one out fantasizing about other people. Some of you may fantasize about Sydney Sweeney. I know I do. I've created many scenarios in my head about Sid, and they've been fun. I don't think any man could have satisfied her in my imagination more than me. They're the natural order of things. These urges are fine as long as they stay in your imagination. And movie makers and storytellers have been fulfilling these urges in people, especially straight guys, for many, many years. So I don't think that's a good criticism, that it's disgusting, there's a lot of, like sexual things. To me, that doesn't really matter. That's irrelevant. It's nothing to be upset about, right? That's how movies used to be sometimes, and that's a good thing. And we should be doing that for everyone, right? Everyone should be fulfilling. Sydney Sweeney goes, well, men always talk about my body. They have opinions on my body. Love. Come off it, yeah? You know exactly what you're doing. But let's forget about Sydney Sweeney. I've got Sydney Sweeney on the mind. Let's move on. So that's Creature Commandos getting a great initial reaction, and they're going to call it a success. They're going to tell us how many people have viewed it, blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't make James Gunn's DCU a success or a failure, whatever happens there. Everything is on Superman. I'm focused on Superman, looking forward to this Superman trailer. Talking about Superman, last night or by the time you see this video, which will be, so today's Tuesday. If you live in Europe, it is now Wednesday when you're seeing this video. Look, I'm not going to go there, it gets too confusing. Anyway, on the CW, they finally aired the series finale of Superman and Lois because James Gunn, Peter Safran, DC Studios and WB Discovery decided that they couldn't handle the competition of a little TV show, so they cancelled it about 3 or 4 seasons earlier than it should have been cancelled. My view on this show is that this is not my favourite take on Superman. Tyler is nowhere near my favourite Superman, but I think it's a beautiful, bold, contemporary take. I have a lot of time for Todd Helbing, who was the showrunner, who developed the show, as well with Greg Berlanti, who really formulated the Arrowverse as well. The decision to move away slightly from the Arrowverse with Superman and Lois was a great decision, but it was a great contemporary take. It was about Superman and his sons and Lois. It was more of a family tale, more of an emotional tale. They spent a lot of money on this. It's not TV people making this show, it's movie people. The show looks stunning. Superman looks amazing. The storytelling, the character arcs are beautiful. And again, I've been sent screenshots. I've seen the ending, the ending portion has been leaked online. And I'm happy for these spoilers because I don't have initial access like Creature Commandos and like Superman and Lois. So then we can talk about this. I never believed that the Smallville series finale, as I told you a few videos ago, totally stuck the series finale landing. And I felt the final 3 seasons, without Alan Moores, the showrunners and creators of the show, it wasn't consistent. But I still watched Smallville, and I still enjoyed many of the final 3 seasons and those episodes. I think there's some good stuff in there, but it wasn't really the Smallville that we all signed up for, but it was still a great run, but I never felt it totally stuck the series finale landing. There's no question, if you enjoyed the journey of Superman and Lois, it stuck the landing. It was consistent with what it was attempting to do. It wanted to tell a family story. It wanted to give you a happy ending. It wanted to show you Superman and Lois growing old together and dying together, and Jonathan and Jordan becoming their own Superman, and they both end up having powers, and it's brilliantly done, and you get that beautiful shot of Steel, his daughter, Superman, Jordan, Jonathan, all in this superhero pose. It's beautiful. Basically, there's nothing more beautiful than the fans being pleased. It's consistent. They didn't try and, pull the rug from underneath anyone. Luthor gets dealt with. Doomsday gets dealt with. It's a happy ending. It's an old-fashioned happy ending. The sons get married, have many of their own children. Who knows if they've got powers. As I say, I get screenshots, I get text under the screenshots, I see lots of clips, but I don't know everything. So if you're saying, but that, you should know, I don't because I didn't completely watch the episode. I'm only working off the information that I have, which is quite substantial, by the way. I think they stuck the landing, I think it's consistent, I think the fans are happy. And for me, I keep on hearing people trying to use this version against other versions. This will stand up with the other versions. Here's my opinion on it, right? I love Superman 78. Superman 2 is a great sequel, but I still don't think it's as good as Superman 78. I like the Donner cut, but it's an unfinished vision of a man's film. So it's hard to judge that. I think Superman 3 is a solid movie despite people hating it. Superman 4, because of its withdrawal of the budget, was a disaster, but I think there was a great story in there, and if it was made properly, that could have been a great movie. But from the moment Dick Donner left, the thing, was never going to end up the way it could have been. So the reverse is brilliant. I love what Chris did. He was a great Superman. I think he's still the Don. He's still the #1 Superman and always will be. I like the Superboy show, even though I think the Superboy concept is dumb, that, before he becomes Superman, he becomes Superboy, and I think that's just a dumb tape. I thought the show was pretty cool. But again, it's not, but I think it stands up there, and a lot of people love that show, and I think that's cool that people love that show, but it's not one of my favourite takes. So the Don is Chris Reeve and Superman 78. So the next movie is Superman Returns with Brandon Routh. I enjoy that movie. It's, you know, it's a great movie with great moments, but it could have been a much better movie. And there's complaints there. We can pick it apart, but I think that's a great movie. And then you've got Man of Steel, another great take. Like Superman and Lois, a very great contemporary take, a very brave and bold and with stunning visuals. BVS is not for everyone, but again, I enjoyed it. Smallville. I think Smallville stands besides Superman 78. The achievements of Smallville, the journey it took Clark Kent. And isn't it interesting? In contemporary times, one of the most successful live-action adaptations of Superman has been one when he's been out of the costume, where he's a teenager, where he has human problems, where he has to come to terms with his powers. It's no surprise that they use Jordan in Superman and Lois as this kind of, you know, pre-Superman kind of, they kind of try and follow the footsteps of Smallville with Superman's son. You kind of get the kind of line I'm kind of going on here. Smallville was a character-driven journey. It was brilliantly done. It honoured so many different versions of Superman. It guest starred so many artists from different, you know, eras of Superman as well. It respected so many different comic book eras. It achieved so many beautiful things. It had Jeff Loeb working in the writer's room, in the Smallville's writer's room. Jeff Loeb is an iconic Marvel and DC comic book writer. He wrote the graphic novel Superman for All Seasons. That's the graphic novel that Alan Wells took inspiration from, for Smallville, and James Gunn saying that's one of the graphic novels his Superman movie is inspired by, but he's like shouted out so many different versions by now. It'll be a quicker conversation to ask which graphic novels James Gunn wasn't inspired by than to talk about the ones he claims he was inspired by. Lots of name dropping from James Gunn. Anyway, so Smallville to me stands beside Superman 78. Then it would be Man of Steel. Then it would be Superman Returns. And then I think, no. Yeah, I think what we'll say is that, Superman Returns, then Superman and Lois. I think they're the best adaptations of Superman, warts and all. I think the George Reeves stuff was groundbreaking at the time. I wasn't a fan of Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher as Lois and Clark, because I don't really think that show's really about Superman. It's a romantic comedy, but mostly women love that show. If it works for you, it works for you. This is what I'm trying to say to you. It's not about saying my version is better than yours. It's not about me saying, well, Superman and Lois proves Snyder sucks. Oh, Snyder's Doomsday sucks and Superman and Lois doesn't. No. The Doomsday on Superman and Lois was stunning, and it was comic book accurate. Zack Snyder's wasn't. But just because it wasn't comic book accurate doesn't make it bad. Celebrate what you love. Stop boring on about what you hate. So Superman and Lois sticks the landing, and from what I can see, the fans are happy. And from the screenshots and the text underneath, thank you to my friends who have got early access, or Americans who got to see it last night. I was literally, I was on the phone to them. I was doing live, video calls with them while they were watching. And, in some cases, I was even able to kind of see as they were watching. So it was a very, very exciting, and obviously the time difference. So I think it stuck the landing. It's not one of my favourite, adaptations of Superman, but I think it's a great one. I think it's a contemporary one. And for many young people, Tyler Hoechlin and, Bitsy Tulloch, Lizzie Tulloch will be their Clark and Lois. They'll love Jordan, they'll love Jonathan, and that's great. Every generation should have their version of iconic characters and their generation's version of Superman, and that's a great thing. Kind of interesting. Is James Gunn's Superman coming too soon? Because it's very interesting. Because from what I see of this Superman and Lois television show for the past 4 years, what I've seen of this series finale, thanks to the people who watched it and told me all about it, I see something that's not going to be forgotten in a very long time. Can this Superman movie inspire people like Superman 78 did, like Smallville did, like, for those fans, the Lois and Clark show with Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher? Can it be an iconic version? This is what Gunn has to do. He has to create every version will be spoken about for years, sometimes for the right reasons and sometimes for the wrong reasons. James Gunn, it's over to you.